Yeah, we're not doctors or giving any medical advice. This show is intended for educational purposes only, and you should talk to your doctor about any medical issues. Now, let's get at it.
Welcome to Chat the Fat, where nutrition authors Nissa Graun and Hale are going to break down common low-carb mistakes. Let's chat all things low-carb, keto, digestion, and more so you can maximize your results.
Hey, welcome back to Chat the Fat. This is episode 42. I'm TC Hale, and I am here with Nissa Graun.
Are you a robot?
I'm efficient is what I am. It might come across as a robot to you, but to me, it just means I'm efficient.
Got it.
So we're case studying.
We are still talking about Debbie. We talked about Debbie during episode 41. And
It's like all we do is talk about Debbie.
Debbie is awesome. So we have lots of great things to say about her and lots of great information to help her improve her plan.
Yeah. So we're going to do some work. We're going to give her some really great insights today that I think are going to be pretty huge. I mean, some of these things, I've seen some drastic life changes with some of the things we're going to talk about with her today. I mean, drastic.
So Debbie let us know that she wants to improve her digestion, hot flashes, and some memory issues. And some things that we've been taking into account while considering Debbie's case is she lost her gallbladder a few years ago. She has been eating keto for around 2 months, which I might add is the start of the keto challenge because she was one of my challengers. And she had bariatric sleeve done about 5 years ago. And she lost some weight, but she said that she put most of that weight back on. So that is where we are at with Debbie.
Right. Which is really kind of a ripoff. And we see this all the time, but you go have this surgery, like I'm going to shrink my stomach so I can't even eat that much and I'm going to lose some weight. But then either the stomach shrinks back up or I just get better at eating things and I gain the weight back. And it's quite upsetting for the people that go through that. So we're going to see if we can straighten some things out.
And I do find it interesting. I've actually known quite a few people who've gone that route, and then they did put the weight back on, and then they turned to keto as their new option since they put the weight back on after having the surgery.
Right. And I just think that, I've also seen that before with, paleo and other low carb, even things before. I think it's just that it's the things that people are seeing people succeed with the most that are like, okay, I guess I need to do that. And keto is the most popular, successful thing right now. Until the ice cream sandwich diet comes out. I'll put that together soon.
Actually, Charlie has you beat. He loves those things. So
he's on the ice cream sandwich diet currently?
No, because I won't let him. But if I allowed him to be, he would be.
Yeah, and he's like 30, 40 pounds. So
kids are big. He's like 70.
Wow. Holy mackerel.
70 pounds. He's actually as tall as I am. It's crazy.
Oh, he's as tall as you are?
He's up to my shoulders almost, yeah.
Okay, that's just crazy. Okay, so let's dig in now to the questions that I asked Debbie, because when we do these case studies, when someone signs up as a goal crusher, which is the annual pay option of our Keto Decoded store, that they get this free case study thing, and I send a huge questionnaire to them. It's like a lot of questions. It's a lot about their life and what they experience when they eat and all this stuff. So then I just pull out the questions that seem to make the most importance to what we're looking at, and then I'll send follow-up questions to her about those things. So this is those questions, and we'll kind of talk about how her answers might give us some insights.
Okay, so let's get started with some of those questions. So the first question you had to do with her breath rate, and you asked her, with a breath rate of 24, were you counting only exhales, or were you counting inhale, 1 exhale, 2 inhales, or 3, etc.?
I was saying like inhale 1, exhale 2, inhale 3, like that. Was she counting like that, or was she just counting her exhales?
I'm glad you're here to clarify that.
Right? It's a good thing I didn't leave early.
Awesome. So she let you know that she was only counting inhales, and she said that she followed the way that you do it in the video in the digestion course. And she counted how many times in 1 minute her phone moved on her belly when she was doing the inhales.
Right. And that's how we teach people to check their breath rate. You can just sit your phone on your stomach and lie down, relax, and then set the timer for 1 minute, and then just count the number of times that your stomach raises, how many times you inhale or exhale, but not one for each one. Because when I see somebody say 24, in most cases they did it wrong. So what I want to say is that, Debbie, I love you. I've never actually had a conversation or met Debbie, so I don't know these things. But what I want to say is that, Debbie, you might be insane.
Oh no.
there's a percentage of a chance that you might have some insanity going on. And so if Debbie, if her husband is always saying, "Why are you so insane?" then she's probably laughing right now thinking, maybe I am a little bit insane. But here's the reality of what goes on. So if I was a single guy right now, I would and I was doing some swipey appy thing. I don't know how they work, but there's dating things where you just, you have people have profiles and all this kind of stuff. My first question would be what is your blood pressure and what is your breath rate? Because if your blood pressure is low and your breath rate is over 22, I know that girl is insane, and I'm going to go on to the next one, because this is what kind of happens. And this is going to be a huge life change for Debbie if she can correct this. Because what happens is when a person is breathing that rapidly, their blood is leaning to acidic. And the body is trying to balance that out, because basically the pH of the blood has a very narrow range that it has to stay within or we die. So the body doesn't let us do that. So it has these buffering mechanisms that it uses to kind of balance out the pH of the blood. One of them that it uses is protein. And protein can kind of help buffer the pH of the blood a little bit. And the other one is that it's CO2. So when we eat carbs or sugars, a byproduct from that is CO2. And CO2 is very acidic. So when the bloodstream is too acidic, the body is like, okay, I'm just going to try to get rid of more of this CO2 to balance it out so we don't get into trouble. And it'll increase the rate at which we breathe in an effort to huff off more CO2. Does that make sense? So we're breathing faster to get rid of more CO2.
It does make sense. But the thing that I want you to clarify is a lot of people will tell you eating, and this is the way they say it, I don't really know the right way to say it, but the way I hear it is eating a keto diet will make you acid.
Right. And they say that because of their lack of knowledge. That's pretty much it. They're just wrong. Those are the people who think that there's either acid foods or alkaline foods, and all of that is fiction. And it's actually, when we went over that in Kick It Naturally show, it was like a 3-part episode. So it's a lot to break down. We're not going to break down all that today, but you can go to kickitnaturally.com and if you're one of these pH people, then just search for the truth about pH and have your mind blown. And then you're going to be very upset at people who have been telling you a lot of wrong information. So what the body's doing is it's trying to balance the pH of the blood. So if the blood was too alkaline, then the breath rate would be very slow, because the body is trying to hold on to as much CO2 as it can to acidify the blood. So these people that say that you're too acid, that can happen where the blood is leaning too acidic, like it appears to be with Debbie. So that's a problem you want to fix. But there's just as many people that are leaning too alkaline and that causes just as many problems in the other direction. So here's the situation, though, Debbie, is that when your breath rate is this high, your body is also basically ripping through glucose and protein at a very rapid pace. So that means that when you're eating any kind of carbs or any kind of protein, the fuel that would come from that, your body says, oh, great, here's some fuel. And by the time it's done saying that, it's gone. You already used all that fuel. Like you're ripping through it like that. And what that does is it leaves your body with no fuel, and it leaves your brain with no fuel. So I don't want to freak Debbie out, but the last client that I had with a breath rate of 24, she was literally schizophrenic and was seeing, I mean, she was on narcotics that were helping her schizophrenia. And when we lowered her breath rate, we fixed that situation, and we also changed some of the foods that she was eating, all of a sudden she was a human being again. It's one of the most incredible stories I've ever seen. And it was a client that I had in person. So I got to see the actual changes in her life. It was like, it makes me almost cry every time I think about it, because they were so phenomenally insane. She was a person that could not work. She couldn't function in her life. She was on drugs that made her a zombie. And she still had these schizophrenic episodes. And when we fixed this issue, she was just a human again. It was unbelievable. So we want to talk about some ways that we can improve this for you, because it's probably going to play back into your insomnia in a really big way too.
But I also want to clarify, and you kind of already did this, but we don't know Debbie.
We have no idea if she's insane or not. Yeah.
We're not saying that she's crazy. Like I said, she was part of the challenge. She's been in our Keto Decoded group, and she's been very, very lovely. So we're not saying
right. And so it's important to look at that. And a person can have a breath rate of 24 and still be completely sane and even happy and all these things, because when the person is having that insane reaction or all these mental and emotional reactions, it's because the brain is not getting the fuel. And this is one cause of all of those mental and emotional actions. It's not all the causes, but it's one of them. So when that is the cause, the body is putting resources towards other things functioning correctly. But maybe the body is saying, I'm going to help this person's brain work, even if everything else falls apart. And Debbie does have quite a few other things that have fallen apart and that are really not working well. So she might be completely sane, functional, happy, all those things. But if her husband is like always asking her, are you insane? Then maybe right now she's laughing and saying, damn, maybe Hank is right. And I don't know if her husband's name is Hank or if she's even married, but you know how it goes when your husband's always telling you something, or your spouse is always telling you one thing, and then you find out later, oh man, maybe that was accurate.
No, I found out that I just don't hear when Jason says things. I just don't hear it at all anymore. So he could be saying that. I just wouldn't know.
Right. That's awesome. So we're going to talk about some things that may help this. And if you can implement them and improve this issue, man, you might see some major improvements to some things going on.
Okay. So are we doing the rest of the questions first?
Let's do it. Yeah.
So the next question you asked her was, when you say you've gained all the weight back, how much did you lose when you had your gastric sleeve done? And she let you know that she lost a total of 50 pounds, and it's been 2 years later, she gained back 30 pounds. She said that her sleeve was done 6 years ago.
Okay, cool.
All right. And then you asked her, when you say you have a hard time eating protein, what happens when you eat it? What are the symptoms you get? She said, when I eat meat, it sits in my stomach for a long time. Then I get acid reflux or heartburn. It lasts for a while, and she gets a full feeling or a very heavy feeling. It goes away after a few hours, and then she has a glass of water, which makes it feel better.
Right. So we understand why this is happening with her. Not only does she not have enough stomach acid, but the compartment that holds whatever she ate plus all the gases that are created is smaller. So it's going to be a magnified issue for her.
Okay. And the next question is, how long have you been taking the sleep aid? What happens without it? And is it hard to fall asleep, or do you wake up in the middle of the night and can't go back to sleep? Or do you just wake up way too early? And she let us know that she has been taking them for about a year and a half. It's not hard to fall asleep. She has nightmares and she has to get up to pee. So when her husband was diagnosed with cancer, that's when she started having nightmares. And she said she does not have a problem getting back to sleep.
And a lot of times with like nightmares or night terrors, it's in all the cases that I've seen, it's always been a situation where resources were going too low in the middle of the night. And for um, someone who can't digest protein correctly, um, not only are you not getting the benefits from that protein, but it's just creating a lot of problems. That can be one issue that doesn't allow fuel to get through the night. But then if a person has a high breath rate and they're ripping through all their fuel so fast, it's going to magnify all that. So when resources go very low, the body basically goes into an emergency mode, and it'll either wake the person up, or it's in such a panic that the dreams that you have reflect that. They're also dreams where you're in a panic or nightmarish type of situations. And when you can lift the resources and allow the body to have fuel to get through the night, all of a sudden all those things can improve.
Okay. And so you asked her, how long have you been taking the True Control and the True Fix? Are you a member of the company? And she let you know that she's been taking those for about 6 months on and off, and she's not a member because she splits an order with a friend. So what exactly is True Control and True Fix?
It's a multi-level marketing company supplement. So when somebody is using that, I want to know, are you a member? Because if you're a member, then you benefit from using it, financially. You benefit from using it or selling it or believing that it works for you. And the financial reward may have artificially reinforced that this is a good thing for you to do. You should take this because. So I just asked that because I don't want a financial. It helps me understand that it might be harder for the person to hear what I'm going to say to them, because a lot of these, first of all, diet pills, we know that that's not the route to go no matter what. But a lot of these things have ingredients that, like the vanadium and the chromium, like we were talking about, to help a person process carbs better. Because for a lot of people, if they could just process carbs better, they would lose weight, because then insulin wouldn't be going so high. Does that make sense? And we know that when insulin can come down, a person can lose weight. That's kind of what keto is all about. It's allowing a person to function without those carbs. And then insulin can come down, the body can access stored fat for fuel, and everything's great. So these ingredients are very helpful for some people when it comes to losing weight. But this is a girl who's already processing all of her carbs and glucose that comes from proteins too fast. She's ripping through it too quickly. And now you're going to give her something to speed that up. I would punch Debbie in the face before I gave this to her. And I really like Debbie so far. So what?
Punch Debbie's friend in the face?
No, I'm saying that
Oh,
that I view this as a worse thing to do than punching her in the face, than to give her these supplements. So one thing that these supplements are very good at is to fill your garbage can.
All right. So not a fan of the True Control or True Fix, obviously.
Okay, maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm not. For her, I'm definitely not.
You might get attacked by multi-level marketers after this.
Yeah, I might get multi-level attacked.
I've actually worked with people who do some of the MLM health supplements, and they've come to me because they can't lose any weight. They're not seeing any results, so I help them. They start losing weight, and then I see them on Facebook saying they're losing weight because of the supplements, and it makes me sad.
Right, and what's really awesome is when you looked on the website for this one, with the supplements, it also said you need to do these things when you take these supplements. You need to eat right, and you need to exercise. And so it's funny, like I think it reminds me of this. My sister was touring some weight loss company for some job that she had, and it was one of those that they freeze the fat or something like that. And they were like, okay, we're going to freeze your fat. And now the results might not show up for 6 months. So you just need to know that it takes a long time to do that. And during that 6 months, we need you to follow this diet plan and follow this exercise program. And so here you pay us $8,000, and it's the freezing the fat is what does it, but you also need to eat right and exercise to see the results.
All right. So on to the next question, now that we have that straightened out.
Right.
You asked her to explain alternating between diarrhea and constipation. Is one of them more often than the other, and how often for each one? So Debbie let you know that when she has MCT oil in her coffee, that does it. I'm assuming the diarrhea.
Mm-hmm.
She said that there's days when I have a very small bowel movement or next to nothing.
Yeah. So like we talked about before, when the fats are not getting processed or emulsified correctly, they become a burden to the body, and the body says, get this out of here right now. And so that's why a lot of people will have diarrhea when they're using MCT oil, just because it's a very concentrated form of those types of fats. And so if she were able to process fats better, then she might be able to do that. But for now, I say, don't do that. Just don't. You don't want to have that diarrhea, because you're having a hard enough time accessing nutrients from your food. When it's racing through the system, you're not getting hardly anything because it's screaming by at 150 miles an hour. How are you going to assimilate any of those nutrients? So you don't want to do that. Now, the other issue when we talk about her diarrhea / constipation is the trick that she has is to fix the bloating and the reflux. She needs to improve the acidity level of her stomach to be able to break that food down correctly. But if she did that, now she doesn't have enough bile to neutralize the acid that will be leaving the stomach, and her diarrhea would very likely be out of control, at least eventually. It may not start off that way, but eventually, if she has enough stomach acid and no bile flow, it should result in a loose stool. That's just kind of how it works. So what we do is we teach people who have lost their gallbladder how to use ox bile. And when we get to her recommendations, we're going to dig into that for a few minutes.
Okay. So speaking of supplements, you asked her how long she's been taking Beet Flow and how much, and whether or not she's done a Beet Flow flush, and if this has resulted in any changes in stool. So she let you know that she's been taking Beet Flow for about 2 weeks on and off. She takes 1 pill a day in the mornings, and she hasn't yet done a flush, and she wasn't sure what to do. She said she wasn't sure if I should with the sleeve and no gallbladder, and she has seen no changes in the stool.
Right. So if she's been doing it for 2 weeks and she's taking 1 pill a day on and off, so she's had 7 Beet Flow, like you're not going to see any kind of result with 7. And the thing with a lack of, when you get your gallbladder yanked, it's often because there was a lot of stones and it's backed up and the bile is crystallized and it's not moving. So they take the gallbladder out. But the thing is that sometimes it's so backed up that crystallization of the bile and hardening of the bile and stickiness of the bile is all the way back up into the biliary pathway. Because when you lose your gallbladder, a person still has bile coming from the liver, and it still flows through the intestinal tract. It doesn't drop down onto the food and neutralize it like it's supposed to, but it's still flowing through the intestinal tract so that a person can emulsify some fats, not as effectively, but some, which is why we see some people with no gallbladder still succeeding on keto, because they still have bile. They can still process the fats. But we like to see people do a Beet Flow flush, even if they don't have the gallbladder, because we want to make sure that biliary pathway is moving, so the liver has a pathway to remove toxins. Otherwise, the liver is just getting backed up and all those toxins are getting reabsorbed, and the system is toxic, and it's hard to lose weight because the body's dealing with all these burdens and shoving a lot of this junk into fat cells. So we like to see them do a Beet Flow flush just to make sure the bile is flowing, but then they really need to use ox bile as their source of bile. So we'll get into that.
Okay. And then you asked her, how much weight would you like to lose? She said another 10 to 15 pounds.
Right.
You asked her, how often are your headaches and where do they start, in the front, top, or back of your head? She said she has headaches once or twice a week and they start in the front of her head.
And so headaches in the front of the head are usually from sugars crashing too low, which makes sense for you um, because you're ripping through those sugars so fastly with your breath rate so fast.
Okay. You asked her, is your joint pain daily? How severe is it? And is it debilitating? You also asked her if she's ever been diagnosed with any type of osteo or rheumatoid type issues. And she said, yes, her joint pain is daily in her left knee. There's no rheumatoid type issues. And the doctor let her know it's just overuse and she had to deal with it. She said she also has plantar fasciitis in her left foot, and that can sometimes be debilitating.
Right. So we don't know for sure what the issue is with her. If she was still eating a lot of carbs, then I would want her to reduce that because that will displace calcium and put it in the joints. But it sounds like if she really is leaning too catabolic, her the tissues may be breaking down and not rebuilding correctly. So she may need to work on that catabolic imbalance, and also maybe doing some things like bone broth or collagen or gelatin so that her body can get some of those easier to access amino acids that the body needs to use to rebuild some of those tissues. Maybe then that she could see some improvement there.
So there's more she can do than just dealing with it.
Right, there is, yes.
Good. Good to know.
Right. You can do more than just hearing sorry about your luck. That'll be $800.
Deal with it. So you asked her, how severe are your cravings currently? What do you do to manage them? How often do you give in to them? And what do you usually give into? And she said she has a strong craving for apples and peanut butter all day long. I sometimes have celery and peanut butter, which helps a bit. I try to wait until the weekend and have an apple with peanut butter. The chocolate craving isn't too bad since I started keto, and only occasionally do I have a piece of chocolate.
Okay. So I would love for you to not have any chocolate right now, just because it's slightly acidic to the bloodstream. So if you have the ability to skip that until you can get your breath rate down, that will likely help. And we know any kind of fruit or anything a person is going to crave when their blood pressure is really low. So that makes sense. But with the peanut butter, I'm kind of wondering if, peanut butter is kind of already halfway broken down as far as protein goes. So I wonder if that's an easier source for her body to access protein, and that's why her body's screaming for it. I wonder if she could improve her ability to break down other proteins, if that might reduce that craving.
And do you think if she took collagen in the meantime, that might help?
Yeah, and bone broth, just because those things are already accessible, you don't need to digest the those nutrients in that bone broth and collagen and those, a lot of those good collagen and gelatin powders that are good that come from good sources allow people to access those nutrients a little bit easier even before they fix their digestion.
Okay. So then you asked her, how severe are your cravings currently? That's one I just read. Never mind. The next question, how long have you been having hot flashes and for how often? Do you still have your period? If not, when did it stop? And she let you know she started a couple years ago, probably about 3 years ago, and she gets 3 hot flashes 3 to 4 times a day. They don't affect her too much for the most part, and she doesn't have any at night, and she does not have periods because those stopped about 5 years ago, unless you give her advice to bring them back.
Right. Yeah. So I think that if she can get more nutrients in her body, that the hot flashes should reduce, unless she's so close on the fence that the body is wanting to bring the period back. So it's like trying even harder. You know what I mean? So you can't really view something as I'm going to do this. And then if my hot flashes don't stop, it means that it's not making things better, because actually they could get worse when you're making things better, just because the body is like, oh, maybe I could try and bring this back. So just kind of let things play out and don't let the hot flashes judge what's going on. Just kind of understand what could be going on as they change, either worse or improve or go away, all that kind of stuff.
Okay. And then you asked her, how long have you had reflux? How often do you have symptoms? And do you take anything for it? You saw that she was taking Pantaloc, and you asked for how long, when did you stop, and what were the results of stopping. So she said that she stopped the Pantaloc and now takes Beet Flow once a day. She'd let you know that. So you asked her if you were hoping the Beet Flow would correct the acid reflux.
And she also said that she developed it after the sleeve surgery, which I thought was kind of interesting too. Um, but yeah, it seemed that she felt that maybe the beet flow was going to help the reflux, which it won't. It will, unless you're helping digestion altogether. But the acid supplements are the side. It's going to really help the reflux improve faster by getting the stomach acidic enough that it then triggers that valve to close. But because that valve that closes once food comes in is triggered by stomach acid. So you have to have enough stomach acid to trigger it. If you just have a little bit of acid in there, then you're still going to be getting reflux, and the reflux is going to have that little bit of acid in it. So you feel it, it burns.
And should she be adjusting her dose of HCl because of the gastric sleeve?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in the recommendation section.
Okay. So next question, when did you lose your gallbladder and what changes have you noticed since? What symptoms are happening that resulted in your gallbladder being removed? And she let you know that this was about 3 years ago. I didn't have any symptoms until one afternoon I doubled over in pain. She went to the doctor and had emergency surgery to take out the gallbladder. And she now realizes that eating fast food does not agree with her.
Yeah, it doesn't agree with anybody in the long run, just so you know, Debbie. But yeah, so it just sounds like she had a gallbladder attack and that it was just backed up enough that they were like, okay, we'll just yank it out and then you won't have gallbladder attacks anymore. So it's very common.
Okay. Next question. You said you've been eating keto for 2 months, and then you said you've been eating low carb for that long. Do you feel like your plan is more low carb or more keto? And she let you know that it is keto because she's eating more fat.
Yeah, and I also asked her, because she had some chicken fingers in there, and I asked her, are they breaded chicken fingers? And she said they were. So if they're just normal breaded chicken fingers, that could be not only enough carbs and sugars to knock you out of ketosis, but the fats are likely more toxic as well, because anything that you get that's breaded from either a restaurant or even you buy it from the store and cook it yourself that's already breaded, they all have toxic oils. They don't have the good kind of fats in them. So now if it's something that you're making yourself, like a keto breaded chicken finger, then that's probably fine and dandy. But that's why I asked that question, because how often do we see somebody say they're eating keto when they've lowered the carbs and they've raised the fats, but the fats are probably not high enough to be keto and the carbs are probably not low enough to actually let the person get into ketosis. So you really want to check your ketones to see if you're doing enough for you to be in the right place. Otherwise, your body's not going to get the fuel that it needs for you to be able to do these things like sleeping and functioning and all that.
I think that breaded chicken tenders are actually a pretty common mistake, because when I first met Jason a long time ago, he was doing low carb and I would see him eat chicken tenders, and I don't think he didn't realize at the time that those weren't low carb. So I think
Right.
that happened and then we realize.
Right. So that's kind of why I wanted to bring that one up, is just to make sure that you're really looking at what you're doing, because how often do we see people like, I did everything right and it didn't work. And then when you look at what they did, oh, look, you actually did nothing right. But that's okay. Why don't we just change this and at least do something right? And then we'll see if that gets some results.
Yes. All right. So last question is, when you say you want to work on digestion, what are the aspects or symptoms you want to improve the most? And she let you know that she'd like to improve the reflux, and she wants to make sure she's getting all vitamins from her food.
Right, which she really needs to be. So there's a couple things let's look at, and we'll start off with the other end. So since you're only having diarrhea when you do the fats, you can just remove those, and maybe you do a beet flow flush, and maybe your flush is different since you can't do that many capsules. A beet flow flush is 4 beet flow every 30 minutes for 2 hours. And you might be able to do that away from food without getting too full. You might be able to pull that off. And if you can, it's fine. It's fine to do that with a smaller stomach because it's just like you're taking beet flow. If you can't fit in there, maybe you got to open up all the capsules and pour them into water, and maybe it'll be disgusting and you just have to kind of, like your doctor said, deal with it. I don't know, but you can test that out and see. But I feel like it would be nice to do one of those just to see if you can get bile moving if it's not. And you might see your stool get a little bit darker if it starts to improve, and that would be a good sign. But then the next step is you might have to test some things out with HCl and realize that if a person doesn't have enough acid in their stomach to trigger that valve to close, and they start off by taking 1 HCl in the meal, their reflux could be twice as bad because now you've added more acid, but it's still not enough to trigger that valve to close. And so now more acid is coming up, and they'll have that issue where it gets worse until they get up to a high enough dose, maybe 5, where now the stomach is acidic enough to where it triggers it to close. So what I like to have people do in that situation is maybe do some D-limonene every other morning for 5 to 10 doses, because this will help wipe out a layer of bacteria in your stomach that may be neutralizing some of your acid. And if you can do that, then when you start taking HCl, maybe you get the correct response faster. So it might be worth doing that. And then you could start testing out 1 HCl or maybe 2 with a meal. And you're not a person that's going to need 5 because you're not eating as much protein as somebody else in each meal because you're eating smaller amounts of food. So, the amount of HCl that a person would use varies according to how much they need and how much protein they eat. So you can test out those 2 things and keep this in mind. If they work, your stool is likely going to get very loose. So if you get the stomach acidic enough to stop that reflux and to actually break down your proteins, your stool might get too loose, and that's when you'll need to start using the ox bile. Even if it starts to get loose at all or loosen up at all, you probably want to start the ox bile. So in the show notes page, I pulled this page out of our almost free digestion course that you can take the course at kickitnaturally.com/keto digest. It's 50 cents for the whole course. But I pulled a page out of it, and I'll put the link in the show notes page. And it's like 5 videos that we made to show someone who has lost their gallbladder how to use ox bile correctly. Because if you use it too close to your food, you're going to get more bloated because it's going to alkalize your food more. Bile is alkaline. So you have to use it as far away from food as possible in the hopes that it'll move through your stomach while the stomach is empty. And then when you have food come in the stomach and it acidifies and it leaves the stomach, it'll meet that bile in your intestinal tract that's already there, that you took, before. So that's kind of the goal when you're doing it. Now, you're never going to make digestion as well as it is with a gallbladder, but you can still improve it enough. Okay, so those are the digestive things that I would do. And you're really going to have to test some things out. If you get stuck, come in. You're in the advanced support group, so come in and ask questions and we'll point you in the right direction. You can also start off, if you want to start off a little more gentle, you can start off with Digest Design before you start with HCl, since that just has a really small amount of HCl in it. So that's another thing to think about. And as far as supplements, you're probably going to want to find some choline. You can find this on Amazon and just health food stores and stuff like that. Just try to find one that's just simply choline. And what that'll do is not only does it help bile flow better, so that's good if yours is backed up, but it'll also help alkalize the bloodstream a little bit and help bring down your breath rate and reduce how rapidly you're ripping through all of this fuel. And that, if you can improve that, is going to change your world. And maybe you only need to take, 1 or 2 choline per day. I usually don't use a whole lot with people. It's great with meals. But over time, if that can reduce your breath rate, I think that you're going to see a whole lot of issues improve in a huge way. And the last suggestion I have is with insomnia, once you have the ability to break down protein better, you really want to have a good source of protein, especially at night for dinner. You want that slow burning log on the fire to give you fuel through the whole night so your body can feel, okay, everything's okay. We have fuel. We don't have to freak out. I don't need to wake her up. We'll just sleep. And one trick is that dark meat protein, it burns, it takes longer to burn through it. So these proteins are going to be harder for you to digest. That's a bad thing, but they're a slower burning log on the fire. So if you can improve your stomach acid enough to break down proteins correctly, then going to dark meat chicken, like chicken thighs or chicken legs or even steak, will help you get through the night better if your breath rate is still fast. Once you bring your breath rate down, then doing things like white meat chicken and all that is fine too. So there's kind of a lot of things to look at there, and some steps that you'd have to take. The first one, improving the digestion. And then if you can improve the ability to break down those proteins in your stomach better, then going to dark meat protein might help that insomnia a whole lot. Now, go back and listen to all that like 17 times because I kind of crammed it all in really fast.
Take lots of notes.
And then ask questions if you get stuck.
All right. So that is great information for Debbie and anyone who might have similar issues. If you are interested in having a case study done just like this, you can go to kickitnaturally.com/annual pay. As you can see, we do a ton of work to put these together, and it takes 2 entire episodes of Chat the Fat just to get all the information out. But we're pretty much telling Debbie exactly what she should do to improve her health and see really great results. So we obviously don't have time to do this for everyone because of all that work. And so the Goal Crushers option is only available from time to time, but you can sign up to be notified when we open it up. So that way you can sign up when we open it, so that way we can fill up the slots when it does open and you can be in one of those slots. So if you want to check to see if it's currently available, check out kickitnaturally.com/annual pay.
Cool. I think that's all the stuff.
That sounds like it.
And we went 1 minute over, so you're going to be late, and now everybody's in trouble.
Joey gets mad at me if I pick him up from daycare.
Yeah, I don't want no trouble from Joey. That dude is awesome. Right. Okay, so we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
Whether you're brand new to keto or just looking to move past roadblocks, join us for our next Troubleshooting Keto Master Workshop. Go to chatthefat.com/workshop to find upcoming dates and register for this totally free event. You just might find your missing piece of the puzzle. Until then, we'll see you next week on Chat the Fat.